My name is Adam. I'm a 38-year-old guy who thought he had it all. A good job, a beautiful wife, Sarah, and a cozy home in the suburbs. We've been married for 12 years. Sure, life wasn't perfect, but it was ours and I believed in what we had. Until recently. It started with little things. Sarah had always been deeply involved in her church. She claimed it grounded her, helped her connect with something bigger. I didn't mind. I'm not particularly religious, but I respected her faith. About a year ago, she started attending sessions with Reverend Grant, our family counselor and a respected figure in our community. He was known for his wisdom and approachability, and Sarah had suggested we attend joint sessions when we faced minor issues. First, it helped. Our talks seemed productive, and Grant always had thoughtful insights. But a few months ago, Sarah started seeing him more often, privately. She told me she was exploring her spiritual growth, and that Grant was helping her cope with the stress of life and marriage. I wanted to be supportive, but something about it didn't sit right with me. She became different, more distant. Our conversations became shorter. Her phone seemed glued to her hand, and she was constantly texting someone. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, saying she was coordinating church events. One evening, I came home to find her dressed in an outfit she wouldn't normally wear. Something tighter, more provocative. When I joked about it, she got defensive. "Can't I feel good about myself?" she snapped. Her tone stung. Sarah had always been self-assured, but this was different. It felt like I wasn't just losing her attention, I was losing her respect. A few days later, I noticed she'd changed her phone password. She never used to lock it. When I asked why, she smirked. "Not everything is your business, Adam," she said casually. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to be the suspicious husband snooping around, but my gut told me something was off. That's when I started paying closer attention to her patterns, her excuses, her lies. Something was very wrong, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I decided to stay quiet for the time being, to observe. I didn't want to jump to conclusions or accuse Sarah without proof. But the signs kept piling up. She started coming home later than usual, claiming she was helping with church renovations or working on outreach projects. Her explanations always sounded plausible, yet they felt rehearsed. One Sunday morning, I offered to join her for service, something I hadn't done in years. She hesitated before smiling too brightly. "That's sweet, Adam, but you just distract me. This is my sacred time." Her words felt like a slap. The turning point came a few days later. I'd gotten home earlier than usual and noticed Sarah's laptop was open on the kitchen counter. She was out, and I told myself I wouldn't snoop, but then an email notification popped up. It was from Reverend Grant. I stared at the screen. The subject line read, "Our plan." My pulse quickened. I hesitated for a moment before clicking it open. The email wasn't lengthy, but it was damning. "Sarah, everything is set for next week. I've spoken to the bank, and the transfer will go through without issue. We'll make the arrangements afterward. Grant." What the hell was this? What transfer? What arrangements? My heart raced as I checked the rest of her inbox. There wasn't much, but a few deleted messages still lingered in the trash folder. Most were cryptic, but there was one that stopped me cold. "Adam doesn't need to know anything until it's too late. Trust me, he won't see this coming." It was dated 2 months ago. 2 months. How long had this been going on? I sat there, shaking, trying to piece together what I just read. They weren't just sneaking around. They were plotting something. Something involving our finances, it seemed. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was practical, calculated. I heard the front door open and quickly shut the laptop, pretending to scroll through my phone. Sarah walked in, her face glowing as if she had just won the lottery. "Hey," she said breezily, dropping her purse on the counter. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Everything okay?" she asked, glancing at me. "Yeah, just catching up on emails." I smiled, hiding my fury. Inside, my mind was a storm of questions. What the hell was she planning? And why did it feel like she wasn't just cheating on me? She was trying to destroy me. I spent the next few days playing the part of the oblivious husband while I pieced together the puzzle. The email had rattled me, but I needed more proof, more context. Sarah was smart and she was careful, but I'd learned to pick up on her patterns. She had a new habit of leaving her phone charging in the living room overnight, a change from the usual spot on her nightstand. I guessed it was because she didn't want me seeing her notifications light up. Late one night, I seized my chance. Sarah was asleep, her breathing slow and even. I crept out of bed and into the living room. Her phone lay there, innocently charging. The password was new, but I knew Sarah, her vanity, her simplicity. After 3 tries, I got in her birth year and her initials. I scrolled through her texts, my stomach tightening with every swipe. There they were. Conversations with Grant. Some were seemingly innocent discussions about church events, but others were anything but, "I can't wait for us to be free of all this. Adam's starting to suspect something, but he doesn't have a clue. I love you. I've never felt this alive." The messages weren't just about an affair. They were dripping with venom toward me. I was a pawn in their game, a stepping stone to whatever life they were planning together. Then I saw the photos. Grant and Sarah in places I didn't recognize, private dinners, intimate poses. My wife in his arms, smiling in ways she hadn't smiled with me in years. My head pounded, my hands shook. Before I closed her phone, I saw one final text that chilled me to my core. "Make sure the paperwork is ready before we tell him. We'll need his signature to finalize the transfer." I didn't know what transfer they were referring to yet, but my instincts told me it was about money. My money. I couldn't stop shaking as I returned to bed, but I forced myself to act normal. If they thought I didn't know, I'd have the upper hand. The next morning, I took the day off work and called my bank. I asked to review recent activity on our joint accounts. My stomach dropped when the clerk told me there had been a series of large withdrawals over the past 2 months, all authorized by Sarah. Tens of thousands of dollars gone. She said it was for a property investment, the clerk explained. She even brought Reverend Grant in to verify the details. Is something wrong? I froze. My wife and her lover had conned their way into my finances, leaving me completely in the dark. They weren't just betraying me. They were dismantling my life piece by piece. That was when I decided. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to destroy them. I spent the next week preparing for what would come next. Confronting Sarah outright wasn't an option. Not yet. She had the advantage, thinking I was clueless. That was her mistake. First, I needed allies. I reached out to my attorney, Greg, an old college friend who specialized in divorce and family law. Over coffee, I laid everything out. The affair, the financial betrayal, the emails, the texts, the suspicious withdrawals. Greg leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "This isn't just infidelity, Adam. If she's forging your signature or misusing joint funds without your consent, it's fraud. Can we prove it?" I asked, my voice tight with desperation. "We'll need more than your word. Do you have access to those emails? Screenshots of the texts?" "I'll get them," I said firmly. He nodded. "Get everything. Bank statements, proof of withdrawals, communications. Once we have enough, we'll file for divorce, and I'll freeze your accounts. They won't see a dime of what's left." That evening, I set up a hidden camera in our living room. I felt like a spy in my own home, but I didn't care. Sarah and Grant's carelessness had given me an opening, and I was going to exploit it. It didn't take long for the camera to bear fruit. 2 nights later, Sarah was on the phone with Grant, pacing the living room with a glass of wine in her hand. "It's almost done," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "I've been playing it cool. Adam has no idea." She laughed, a sound that sent a cold rush of anger through me. "Yeah, I'll get him to sign the papers this weekend. Just make sure everything's ready on your end." I clenched my fists, staring at the screen. Papers? What papers? I couldn't believe the audacity of it all. When she hung up, I rewound the footage and saved the clip. It was one more piece of evidence to add to my growing arsenal. The next day, I met Greg again and handed over everything I'd collected. Screenshots of the texts, copies of emails, and now the footage. "This is gold," Greg said, scrolling through my files. With this, we can hit them where it hurts. But Adam, what? This isn't just about ending your marriage. If you want to press charges, we'll be dealing with fraud, maybe even conspiracy. Are you sure you're ready for this? I stared at him, my jaw tight. They didn't just betray me, Greg. They tried to ruin me. They deserve whatever's coming. All right, he said with a grim smile. Let's do it. That night, I sat in the dark, reviewing my plan. Sarah and Grant thought they were in control, but they had no idea the storm that was about to hit them. I'd let them dig their own graves, and when the time was right, I'd bury them in it. By the weekend, I felt like a predator closing in on prey. The trap was ready, I just needed Sarah to step into it. Saturday morning, Sarah seemed unusually cheerful. She hummed a tune as she moved around the kitchen, flipping pancakes. It was the kind of effort she hadn't made in months. Big plans today? I asked, keeping my voice light. Not really, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just running some errands. It was a lie. I'd installed a GPS tracker on her car earlier in the week. As soon as she left, I checked the app on my phone. She wasn't heading to any grocery store or bank. Her destination was clear, Grant's home. I followed her, keeping a safe distance, my heart pounding. She parked in Grant's driveway, walked to the door, and let herself in like she owned the place. I stayed in my car, fuming. My instinct was to storm inside, to confront them, but I held back. This wasn't the time. I needed more proof, more leverage. An hour later, Sarah emerged, her face flushed and her hair slightly disheveled. She looked pleased, as if her day couldn't have gone better. I clenched my jaw and watched as she drove away, completely unaware of the fury trailing her. When she got home, she found me sitting in the living room, a stack of papers in front of me. "What's this?" she asked, her smile faltering. "Just some documents I need you to sign," I said casually. Her eyes flicked to the papers, then back to me. "What kind of documents?" "Banking stuff," I lied. "I've been moving some investments around, for our future." Her hesitation was brief. She reached for the pen and began signing, her confidence blinding her to the truth. Once she was done, I took the papers and tucked them into my bag, barely restraining the smirk threatening to break across my face. "Thanks," I said, standing. "I'm heading to the office for a bit." "On a Saturday?" she asked, her tone curious but not suspicious. "Just some loose ends to tie up." As I drove away, my mind raced. The papers Sarah had just signed weren't for banking. They were a preemptive move Greg had suggested. An affidavit acknowledging her recent withdrawals and a statement forfeiting any claim to my assets. She had signed them without even reading. Step 1, I muttered to myself. That evening, I checked my hidden camera. As expected, Sarah was on the phone with Grant again. "Everything's on track," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "He didn't even question the papers. I'll send you the details tomorrow." She laughed, a high, triumphant sound. I stared at the screen, my anger a cold, controlled burn. She thought she'd won, but the game was just beginning. The following week, I acted like everything was normal, even though inside I was simmering with rage. Sarah's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a full-on assault on my trust, my finances, and my dignity. But if I wanted my revenge to stick, I had to play this carefully. On Wednesday, I received a call from Greg. "The affidavit is airtight," he said. "If this goes to court, she's got no legal claim to your remaining assets." "That's good," I replied. "But I'm not done yet." Greg sighed. "Adam, you've already got enough to destroy her in court. What more do you want?" I hesitated before answering. "I want them humiliated, Greg. I want the world to see them for what they are." He paused, then said, "If that's your goal, I've got an idea. But it's not pretty." "Tell me." He explained his plan, and by the time he finished, my chest was tight with anticipation. It was risky, but it would leave no room for doubt about their betrayal. The next morning, I called in a favor from a tech-savvy friend, Matt. He worked as a private investigator and owed me for helping him out with legal troubles a few years back. I need you to set up a public broadcast, I said. For what? Matt asked, intrigued. To expose my wife and her lover. Matt whistled. You're not messing around. Send me the files and I'll make it happen. I forwarded him the hidden camera footage, the incriminating texts, and the emails. I told him to prepare a secure website where everything could be uploaded for anyone to see. It'll take a couple of days, Matt said. But when it's ready, it'll be unmissable. Perfect, I replied. By Friday, the website was live. I didn't share it yet. That would come at the perfect moment. On Saturday, Sarah came home with a bottle of champagne and a smug grin. What's the occasion? I asked, forcing a smile. She shrugged. Just felt like celebrating. I played along, pouring us each a glass. She looked at me with that fake warmth she'd mastered over the past few months. Everything okay? She asked, tilting her head. Couldn't be better, I lied. Inwardly, I thought about how this would be the last time she looked at me with that phony charm. Her world was about to implode, and I would be the one lighting the match. The stage was set. All I needed now was an audience. Sunday morning came, and it was time for the fireworks. Sarah had gone to the early church service, likely to meet Grant, and I stayed home, finalizing the details of my plan. The website Matt created was a masterpiece of damning evidence. The texts between Sarah and Grant, dripping with their shared contempt for me. The emails discussing their plans to siphon money and run away together. Video footage of Sarah's confession during her phone calls, and her giddy betrayal. At the top of the page was a bold headline, The Truth About Sarah and Reverend Grant, a tale of deception. Below that, a simple message from me. To everyone who knows them, this is who they really are. Once everything was uploaded, I sent the link to our church's community mailing list, which included everyone in Sarah's social circle. I also shared it anonymously on a local forum for the neighborhood. Finally, I set up an automated email to deliver the link to Sarah and Grant later that afternoon. Then I waited. Around noon, Sarah came home looking radiant. Her hair was done, her makeup perfect. She seemed more alive than I'd seen her in months. Good service? I asked, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. Wonderful, she replied, her tone syrupy. Grant's sermon was so moving. I almost laughed at the irony. That's great. She moved to the kitchen to make herself lunch, humming as if her life was perfect. I checked my phone discreetly. The forum where I'd posted the link was blowing up. What the hell? Is this real? OMG. Isn't this the pastor at the church on Elm Street? This is insane. I know her. She's on the church board. Comments were pouring in. I could imagine the chaos spreading through our community. By 1 p.m., Sarah's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Her smile faded as she checked her notifications. What's going on? She murmured, opening one message after another. Her face paled as she clicked a link. Adam! She shrieked, turning to me with wide, horrified eyes. What did you do? I set my coffee down calmly. I told the truth, Sarah. The truth you've been hiding from everyone. She stumbled toward me, her phone trembling in her hand. You put this online? Every bit of it, I said, standing. The texts, the emails, the video footage. It's all there, for everyone to see. Her expression morphed from shock to fury. You had no right. I had every right. I roared, cutting her off. You lied to me. You stole from me. You planned to leave me in ruins while you ran off with him. Don't you dare talk about rights. Her jaw worked as she struggled for a response. But before she could say anything, her phone rang. It was Grant. You should answer that, I said coldly. I'm sure he's feeling the heat too. She hesitated, then picked up. I could hear his panicked voice through the receiver. Sarah, what the hell is this? People are calling me nonstop. The church elders are furious. This could ruin me. Grant, I didn't know he would. You didn't know? I interrupted, my voice dripping with mockery. You didn't think I'd find out? You didn't think I'd fight back? Sarah glared at me, tears welling in her eyes. "You've ruined everything." "No, Sarah," I said, stepping closer. "You ruined everything the moment you decided to betray me. Now you get to live with the consequences." She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "What do we do?" she whispered into the phone. Grant's voice was frantic. "I don't know. I need to figure this out. Don't call me again." The line went dead. For the first time in months, I saw genuine fear in Sarah's eyes, and it felt damn good. Sarah sat there, staring at her phone as if it might magically erase the chaos I had unleashed. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the texts, the stolen money, and the smug look on her face when she thought she'd won. "Adam," she began, her voice shaky. "You don't understand. It wasn't. Don't even try." I snapped, cutting her off. "I've seen the texts. I've read the emails. I've watched the footage of you and Grant laughing at me like I'm some idiot. So, spare me the excuses, Sarah. You made your bed." Her lip quivered, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Grant. It was one of her friends from church. "Answer it," I said, crossing my arms. "Let's see how well you explain this one." She hesitated but eventually picked up. "Hello, Sarah." The voice on the other end was loud enough for me to hear. "What's going on?" "I just saw the link. Everyone's talking about it." It's not true," Sarah stammered, trying to regain control. "It's all lies." "Lies?" I barked, laughing bitterly. "Go ahead, Sarah. Tell them how I faked your texts, how I made up the emails you wrote to Grant. Or maybe explain how I edited video footage of you plotting against me." The voice on the phone fell silent. "You there?" Sarah asked weakly. Her friend's tone turned icy. "I can't believe you, Sarah. After everything, you're disgusting." The call ended abruptly. Sarah slammed her phone down on the table, tears spilling from her eyes. "Why are you doing this to me?" "You mean exposing the truth?" I said, leaning forward. "Because I won't let you walk away from this unscathed. You lied, cheated, and tried to ruin me. You thought you could just move on with your new life while I was left in the rubble. Not happening." By late afternoon, the fallout had spread like wildfire. I received a text from one of the church elders, someone I'd barely spoken to in years. "Adam, I'm sorry for what you've been through. I saw the site. We're calling an emergency meeting to discuss Reverend Grant's position. You deserve better." Another text came from a neighbor. "Man, I had no idea Sarah could be so cruel. I'm here if you need anything." I ignored most of them, but each one felt like a small victory. Sarah's perfect image was crumbling, and Grant's once untouchable reputation was in freefall. That evening, Sarah tried to talk to me again. Her voice was quieter now, her usual defiance replaced with desperation. "Adam," she said softly, "can we just talk about this? Please, talk." I scoffed. "You mean so you can twist the truth again?" "I don't think so." Her tears started anew. "I made a mistake, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far." "A mistake?" I barked. "You didn't accidentally text him about stealing my money. You didn't accidentally plot to leave me penniless. You knew exactly what you were doing." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Adam, I love. Don't you dare say it," I snapped. "You don't get to use that word anymore. Not after everything you've done." She crumpled into a heap on the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, I stood there, watching her fall apart. It was a glimpse of the pain she had inflicted on me for months. But I wasn't done yet. Monday morning brought the next wave of consequences. Sarah was still hiding out at home, glued to her phone as calls and texts continued pouring in. Meanwhile, I had other plans. I knew the church would be Grant's stronghold. For years, he'd been the trusted face of the congregation, untouchable in the eyes of the elders and parishioners. That was about to change. At 9 a.m., I sent an email to the church leadership. It included the link to the website and a personal message. "To whom it may concern, this is the man you've entrusted with your community. This is the man who preaches morality and righteousness every Sunday while carrying on an affair with my wife and defrauding me. If this is the kind of leadership you stand for, then perhaps the church isn't what I thought it was. Within an hour I got a reply, Adam, we are deeply disturbed by what we've seen. An emergency meeting has been scheduled for this evening. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I knew what that meant. Grant's days as a reverend were numbered. That evening, I parked a few blocks away from the church and walked in, keeping to the back pew. The meeting wasn't public, but word had gotten out, and people were whispering in the aisles. I spotted Sarah in the front row, sitting next to Grant, both of them looking pale and tense. For once, they weren't the center of adoration. They were the targets of judgmental stares and murmured accusations. The head elder, a stern man named Victor, stood at the pulpit. Brothers and sisters, he began, his voice grave. We've gathered here today to address a serious matter involving Reverend Grant. Grant shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We've reviewed the evidence provided, Victor continued, his eyes scanning the room. It is undeniable and deeply troubling. Reverend Grant, you have betrayed the trust of this congregation and violated the principles you swore to uphold. Grant began, standing. Sit down, Victor said sharply. The murmurs grew louder. As of now, you are relieved of your duties, Victor said. Effective immediately. You are no longer welcome in this church. Grant's face turned red. This is outrageous. You're going to ruin me over some lies. These aren't lies, Victor snapped, holding up a printout of the texts. They're your words, your actions. You did this to yourself. The room erupted into chaos. Some people shouted in anger, others whispered furiously. Sarah buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I slipped out before anyone could notice me, satisfied that I'd lit the match that burned down their empire. Back home, Sarah stormed through the door an hour later, her face streaked with tears. Are you happy now? She screamed. You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, I said coldly. You and Grant did that all on your own. She threw her purse onto the floor. They fired him. He has nothing left. And whose fault is that? I asked, standing. You two played a dangerous game, Sarah, and you lost. Don't come crying to me now. She glared at me, hatred simmering in her eyes. You think you've won, don't you? Oh, I know I've won, I said, stepping closer. You humiliated me, stole from me, and lied to my face for months. Now you're getting exactly what you deserve. She backed away, shaking her head. You're a monster. No, Sarah, I said, my voice icy. I'm the man who finally stopped being your victim. She retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat down on the couch, letting the silence wash over me. The world they built together had crumbled, and I was just getting started. With Grant's fall from grace complete, I turned my focus to the financial aspect of their betrayal. My lawyer, Greg, had been working behind the scenes to unravel Sarah's fraudulent activities. It was time to tighten the noose. On Tuesday, I received a call from Greg. We've traced the money, he said. Sarah's withdrawals from your joint account were transferred to a private account she set up. And guess who's listed as a co-owner? Grant, I said, my jaw tightening. Bingo, Greg replied. They've been funneling the money to cover their tracks. We've got enough to prove intent to defraud, which strengthens your divorce case. This could also open the door to criminal charges if you want to pursue them. Let's do it, I said without hesitation. That evening, I confronted Sarah. She was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone, no doubt trying to salvage the remains of her shattered reputation. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my tone firm. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. What now, Adam? Haven't you done enough? I tossed a folder onto the table. Not even close. This is a record of every cent you stole from me, every fraudulent transaction you made with Grant. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? She opened the folder with trembling hands, her eyes widening as she scanned the documents. I didn't steal from you, she said weakly. I just borrowed it. I laughed bitterly. Borrowed? Don't insult me, Sarah. You and Grant were planning to drain me dry and run off together. Do you even realize how disgusting that is? She closed the folder and looked up at me, her face contorted with desperation. Adam, please, we can fix this. I'll give it all back. Just don't. Don't what? I snapped, cutting her off. Don't press charges? Don't expose you further? Why the hell should I let you off the hook? Her voice broke. Because I was stupid, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought he loved me. I stared at her, my anger momentarily eclipsed by disbelief. You risked everything. Our marriage, our finances, your reputation. For that man? A lying, manipulative snake who used you just as much as you used me. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. I made a mistake, she whispered. No, I said coldly. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a calculated betrayal. And now you're going to face the consequences. The next day, Greg filed a petition to freeze Sarah's private accounts. I wanted to make sure she couldn't touch the money she'd taken. At the same time, he initiated divorce proceedings, citing fraud and infidelity as grounds. Once this hits the courts, she won't just lose access to the money, Greg explained. Her reputation will be in tatters. And if you want to pursue criminal charges, we can leverage this evidence with law enforcement. Do it, I said. By the end of the week, Sarah received official notice of the frozen accounts. The moment she opened the letter, she flew into a rage, storming into the living room where I was calmly reading. You froze my money? She screamed. My money? I corrected, not bothering to look up. You just stole it. Her hands shook as she clutched the letter. How could you? How am I supposed to survive? That's not my problem, I said coldly. Maybe you can ask Grant for help. Oh wait, he doesn't have anything left either. Does he? Her face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize. Instead, she turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. As I watched her leave, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The pieces of their scheme were falling apart, and I was making sure there was no escape. Grant was next to break. 2 days after Sarah left the house in a fit of rage, I received an email from none other than the disgraced Reverend himself. Subject: Let's talk. Adam, I know you're angry. I know I've made mistakes, but dragging this out helps no one. Let's meet and figure out a way to resolve this like adults. I laughed bitterly at his audacity. Resolve this? Like adults? After everything he'd done? I replied with one sentence. See you in court. That evening, Greg called with an update. Grant's lawyer reached out. He's panicking. Wants to settle everything quietly. Not a chance, I said. They didn't give me that courtesy when they were plotting behind my back. Understood, Greg said. We'll keep applying pressure. Grant was crumbling, and I intended to let him shatter. Late one night, Sarah showed up at the house. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Adam, please, she begged, standing in the doorway. Let's talk. I leaned against the frame, blocking her way. What's there to talk about, Sarah? You destroyed everything. I didn't mean for it to end like this, she said, her voice trembling. I was stupid, reckless, but I never wanted to hurt you like this. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me, stole from me, and tried to ruin my life. You're only sorry because you got caught. Tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll do anything to make it right. You can start by leaving, I said coldly, shutting the door in her face. A week later, the divorce hearing arrived. Sarah and Grant looked worn down, their confidence long gone. Greg presented the evidence. Fraudulent withdrawals, emails detailing their scheme, and the video recordings. The judge's verdict was swift. Sarah was awarded nothing from the marriage, no alimony, no assets. Her actions had forfeited her rights. The stolen money was ordered to be repaid in full. Grant, already disgraced in the church, faced a lawsuit for his part in the fraud. His lawyer looked defeated, knowing the case was airtight. As we left the courtroom, Sarah tried to catch my eye. I didn't look back. Grant's life unraveled even further after the court's ruling. The lawsuit against him gained traction, and his remaining supporters at the church abandoned him. Rumors swirled that he was forced to sell his home to cover legal fees. One day, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance. Grant's gone bankrupt. Lost everything. I read the message twice, a grim satisfaction settling over me. The man who once stood on a pedestal had been reduced to nothing. It was justice, poetic and complete. In the weeks following the fallout, I began rebuilding my life. The house felt emptier without Sarah, but also lighter, free of lies and manipulation. I sold the property and moved to a smaller place, somewhere that didn't hold the ghosts of betrayal. Greg and I celebrated the case's closure with drinks, laughing at how thoroughly the plan had worked. Sarah attempted to contact me one last time, leaving a voicemail begging for forgiveness. I deleted it without listening to the end. As for Grant, he disappeared from the community altogether. Rumor had it he moved out of state, disgraced and penniless. I felt no guilt. They'd played their game and I had won. This experience taught me to trust my instincts and value my own worth. Sometimes, justice isn't just about the law, it's about reclaiming your dignity. And I'd done exactly that.